Buzz with Jess Lujan.
We're back with main studio guest, Dr. Mike Bevacqua. We're talking, of course, a little bit of Guam history. Doc, again, before we went on the break, I asked you the question. Go ahead.
Also, what you said is right, is most likely on point from everything we know. Chamorros came, they were very generous, you know, they gave food and water, and then they boarded the ships of the Spanish, and then there's differences. I mean, most likely Chamorros did not like the fact that the Spanish didn't seem to really reciprocate. Some accounts say that the Chamorros that hit first, you know, that they stole stuff first. Other accounts say that the Spanish hit first, attacking the Chamorros. But it's really interesting because some accounts by some sailors actually say that when the Chamorros saw the Spanish, they weren't amazed at them at all. They just kind of looked at them and kind of stared at them, probably thinking, you know, why are you wearing all that, man? Aren't you hot?
You have aircon in your boat or something like that?
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's what I say, you know, I mean, we have accounts, of course, that the Chamorros back then were beefy guys, you know. They were big people, and so of course when you have these explorers, I mean, from pictures that we've seen, they're fully clothed and armors and things of that nature. So if if the Spanish weren't built like that, the explorers, you would look at somebody that's almost naked, you know, and says, man, he doesn't have any armor on and stuff, but man, look at the way he's built, you know. They must have been at awe, you know, and for one to never have seen anybody maybe fully clothed and with all this this
your metal armor like that.
What do you do?
Yeah, it would have been an interesting cross-cultural moment.
So again, you have different accounts of that then again, because there's accounts that say again that the Chamorros were very at awe with the Spaniards, and you said you have there are other
some
accounts
which say that Chamorros weren't impressed, and because sometimes, you know, the Spanish would say a lot of things. You know, sometimes they would say Chamorros didn't have fire. You know, Chamorros knew what fire was, of course. They would say stuff like Chamorros didn't have rice. We have evidence that Chamorros had rice before the Spanish came in. And so sometimes you can't trust those accounts because a lot of them are very self-serving, you know. So wherever Europeans went, they always like to say that the people were awed by us because like they had never seen anyone as awesome as we are. But you know, it's very possible that Chamorros even already knew about metal before Magellan came, because Chamorros already had contact with mainland Asia prior to the Spanish arriving, and so it's very possible that they already knew what metal was. And that's of course why they wanted to trade with Magellan, though, because they knew metal was valuable. They already had experience with it.
Yeah. No. Again, when you're talking about, of course, our heritage here and things of that nature, we look at basically where we had come from and all that, how we were, because again, we weren't as the Chamorro people, we weren't Christians, but as these explorers went out and supposedly discovered places, you know, they've always had also again in mind is to spread Christianity, you know, and so with that, I guess that was a major goal as well, is to spread the word of Christianity and conquer the world of Christianity. How did the Chamorros take to that in the very beginning? And there were a lot of lives lost because, again, trying to change the belief that they had for hundreds of thousands of years, and now you're going to give me something, and you know, you can't bite it off right away.
Oh yeah, it was a difficult time, you know. Salvatorius, Pale Salvatorius, when he came, you know, at first he was very popular amongst Chamorros. He came like 147 years after Magellan. But when he came, Chamorros really liked him at first because he could speak Chamorro. He had learned it from a Filipino who had been shipwrecked on Guam for many years. And so at first Chamorros were willing to convert, they were eager, and part of that was that the Spanish were giving away gifts, you know, they were giving away rosaries, pieces of metal, and so Chamorros were converting to Christianity because they liked hearing Salvatorius speak Chamorro with his weird accent. You know, they wanted to get the rosaries and the pieces of metal. But then after they learned sort of what Christianity meant, you know, it meant you had to change your life around. You know, it meant that sort of women could no longer have sort of the social power that they had before. It meant that you couldn't worship the spirits of your ancestors anymore. You know, all these things changed. Then most Chamorros sort of rejected Christianity. They rejected it by just stepping back and saying, I'm not going to Mass.
And of course, of course, Spanish, they don't come from a matrilineal society,
yes.
of course.
That's right.
So, totally against what the Chamorros were about, basically.
Yes. You know, women would have had it the hardest at
Sure,
that time
sure.
because they were the ones who were losing the most. You know, because as a man, you know, you were losing some power, but as a woman, you would lose almost everything. You would kind of get shut out of a lot of things in life. And so, but that's why, you know, many Chamorros rose up and fought against the Spanish because they were losing their way of life. You know, somebody like Matapeng.
Yeah.
You know, he's a guy who bears sort of the legacy of
Sure.
of the victory of Christianity because his name before meant to be purified or to be cleansed.
Yeah, yeah.
And now it means crazy or stupid or obnoxious or rude.
Basta matapang mo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know when you say to your friends, "Hey, Lan, you're so matapang," you don't mean, "Man, you're so purified."
Yeah, you're right. You're genuine, you know.
But that's the legacy
Sure.
of, you know, Matapeng is the guy who, for whatever reason, thought the influence of the priests were causing damage in people's lives. He may have had a personal beef with San Vitores, but he killed San Vitores.
Yeah.
And his name was stigmatized because of that. It became like a really bad word, you know. So that's why it's so negative now, whereas before it meant. Can you imagine going from purified to crazy?
All in one day. all in one day. But my understanding, of course, that with Matapeng, his wife was in the process already converting, but it was him. Is that account of history pretty much right?
I mean, Matapeng's wife is one of the sort of the figures in that story, which is sort of the least known about, although she has a central role. Although I can tell you though that Matapeng himself was converted to Christianity.
Oh, okay.
Him and San Vitores. That's why, you know, if you go back to 1672 in Tuman, in April, the fateful day when San Vitores died, you know, San Vitores may have expected that Matapeng would welcome him into his house because they had actually been friends at one point. But Matapeng had changed. You know, he decided to fight against the missionaries and stuff. But yeah, it's a very interesting sort of story. I always hope that sort of one day, you know, Matapeng's legacy will be, you know, recovered or restored, just because, you know, even if most Chamorros are Catholics nowadays,
Sure.
if you look at sort of that time, you know, he was fighting for what was right.
Sure, and that's our history. You can't forget that, regardless of whatever the history may be, good, bad, or indifferent. It's part of the history. I mean, as I guess not celebration, but as part of Guam history is that supposedly discovered. You know, you can't erase that because you don't like that part of history. It is what it is. You know, we don't like the period of slavery and women not being able to vote, but that's part of American history. And so you study it and you move it. And how did it go about? Because that was a major change from not being allowed to vote, from slavery to where we have now. We have the first African American president. You know, so we have evolved. The world's evolved. We have evolved. But there's one thing that we haven't evolved yet, and I ask you this: is as much as we look back as a colonized people, as a colonized country at the time, we go back 1521. We go to the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s. Here at 2014, one thing still remains the same.
Yep. Kakalaniha. It's so true. It's so true. That's why you know. That's why I don't know. I see all of these signs around us. You know, that sort of that our people are mentally decolonizing. That sort of we're looking back at our history and we're basically saying, you know, we're not going to settle for what we settled for before. And you know, that's always the goal. That's always the dream. You know, I always use the metaphor of like a canoe. So what does colonization do? Is you have this beautiful canoe, and then a colonizer comes and he cuts your sail down, and then he says, for the rest of your life, you're stuck with a galaidi. You can't sail the open seas anymore. You can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But then decolonization is taking that canoe and having the courage to basically say, you know, screw you. Yeah, you cut down my sail, but so what?
Yeah.
I'm going to put a new sail in, and I'm going to sail wherever I want.
This is going to take me over there.
Could take me this
Anywhere I
direction,
wanna
that
go.
direction,
There we
that
go.
direction.
There we
But
go.
ultimately, though, it's that just, you know, that ability to see that you have rights, you have a choice, you should be in control of your destiny.
So basically, ourselves and our leaders, we got to get our doggons off our seats and do something about it. We're going to be right back. Pay some bills. Be right back.